As you saw in the last video, which was a complete and utter failure, the motor is sitting there. It does look like it's in, but it's actually not bolted up on the motor mounts. It's just kind of halfway in there because we have an issue with the motor mounts. And today I'm gonna fix it. So let me show you what's going on with the motor mounts. Ignore the fact that this has got an intake and a carburetor and an air cleaner on there. That was all just kind of put there because I needed something to make me feel good. And a motor looks better when you step back and look at it, and it's got a full top end. Anyway, none of that's bolted on. We just got to pull that off, and I'll be putting that intake right over there. Be bolting that one back on because it's got the motor lift plate already bolted to it for using the picker. And we'll just get this one out of the way. And the motor mounts. The headers, these headers aren't going to work. I still don't have my replacement headers. If you didn't watch the last video, the reason these headers won't work is because the steering shaft, which is this little guy right here, can't get to where it needs to be because the primary tube on the number 3 cylinder is directly in the way, more so than some header bashing is going to fix. I thought about cutting it off and rerouting it over so that it came down, you know, went kind of over and then down, but that seemed like more of a pain in the neck than I wanted it to be. And I don't know that I'm good enough or have the right stuff to actually pull that off. I don't know, I probably could. But anyway, I found a different set of headers that should work. I don't have them yet, which is a bummer because they were on back order and I don't know when I'm gonna get them. And until the motor's actually secured properly, I can't make too much more progress on some of the other stuff that needs to happen. I did go and get a bunch of stuff to do the brakes, and I was considering doing that, but decided I want to wait until I have the headers in so I can make sure that brake line routing and header routing are all happy together, because I don't want to have to redo the brakes once the headers are in because I chose a poor way of routing it because I didn't have the headers I was going to run. So instead, we're going to do the one thing that I was also wanting to wait on until I had the headers, but I don't expect that it's going to affect it because the motor's where the motor needs to be as far as how it's sitting here. But my motor mounts, this side of the motor mount I can get lined up, and this side's low. And the transmission is sitting on the cross member back under there, pretty much right where it needs to be, so much so that I can actually bolt it to the cross member in the back. And then what that brings me to, you know, our oil pan clearance. I mean, it's tight, but it clears the rack. So the oil pan's happy where it's at, and it's pinned exactly the same on this side. Front hole motor mount is lined up, the back hole is not. So basically, the ears that are on the chassis need to be modified so that the bolt holes can line up with the motor mounts. And I thought about it would probably be easier to modify the motor mount so that the ear on the motor mount was a different length, but if I ever have to replace motor mounts, I'll have to replace them with and modify the motor mounts every single time if I ever have to replace motor mounts. Now you're like, that's an all steel motor mount, you'll never have to replace it. Well, I don't want to run steel mounts. I want to run poly mounts or rubber mounts, something that's going to take some of the vibration out, because this is going to be a road car where I want to be able to drive it long, you know, road trip it and go to events and swap meets and whatever. I want to be able to take this car to do it. And solid mounts aren't really ideal for that. They're more of a race application sort of deal. But what the solid mounts do give me is a very good alignment of the motor mount holes that I can use to get the chassis set up to accept standard motor mounts. Today's plan is pretty simple. We're going to get the motor back hung on the cherry picker so that it's just hanging where it needs to be. And then I'm going to cut the mounts that are on the frame, tweak them, see if I can tweak them. I don't want to cut them completely off initially. I want to see if I can kind of pie cut it a little bit and basically create a slot in the mount that I can then take a mallet, knock it down to where it needs to be, and weld it back in and see what that looks like. Absolute worst case, if we do have to cut mounts completely off and build new ones, that's what we'll end up doing, which I won't be able to do today because I don't think I have enough of the right thickness of steel to actually do that. And today's kind of a short work day because I got to get on a plane and travel tomorrow. So later this evening, I got to get ready to actually do that for work stuff that, you know, makes it so I can do this sort of stuff, you know, all that adulting crap. So I'm going to take the next couple of minutes. I'm going to get the headers pulled out of here because, like I said, they don't work anyway, so they need to just get out of my way. Get the intake swapped over to the one that's got the lifting eyes on it, get the picker over here, get it hooked up, and then we'll be able to start working on how we're going to cut the motor mount. And once we have that kind of tweaked into place, we'll hopefully be able to weld it, bolt it up, and our motor transmission combination will actually be properly affixed in the chassis. Hopefully. I don't want another failure day. So fingers crossed that this all works out. All right. Everything's out of the way. The engine's being supported by the hoist. As you can see, it's got the weight on it. The motor mount is pinned, aligned here in the front. As you can see, the bolt doesn't go all the way through, but it's pinned at the front, which is going to help keep my alignment. I've got it pinned on the other side the same way the front of the motor mount's pinned. The plan is I'm going to take my grinder and I'm going to cut in from the back, which is kind of a tight space, but we're going to make it work one way or another. I'm going to cut in from the back, and I'm not going to cut this front face here. I'm going to cut through the back side and through the top to probably about 3/4 of the way across, almost to where the radius is, because this was probably a piece of square tube at one point in time. The bottom's hollow. It's not plated on the back side, but basically cut to where it's rounded here on the corner and stop still at the top, so I'm not cutting into this side of the motor mount on the chassis. Once I'm there, I'm going to use some form of leverage to basically bend the motor mount on the chassis to close that gap back up and see if that'll get me far enough to get my bolt to where it'll go through. And once that's through, I'll do the same thing over there on the other side to where both bolts are where they're happy. Once both bolts are happy and the alignment's good, then I'll come in and I'll put a couple of tack welds to hold that all together, pull the whole drivetrain back out of the car, and get in there and give that proper welds, and hopefully that'll solve my motor mount issue. Well, that was fun. Working with a grinder right down in this motor mount area, kind of sketchy. At least a full-size grinder, and I do have the pneumatic death wheel, but those are sketchy even when you have plenty of room, so I didn't go to that route, and I don't know that I could have got it in there any better. Anyway, motor mounts are slotted, so now we just got to see if I've got enough material removed from the motor mount to use a good old lever to get it where it needs to be so that that bolt will go all the way through. Once the bolt goes all the way through, we'll be able to throw a couple of tack welds on it, and well, if that works and the alignment works, then I just got to pull the transmission cross member bolts back out, drop the cross member, that's only a couple of bolts, and yank the drivetrain out, and these can be welded up solid so that they will reliably hold the motor. After that, we should be able to slam the motor back in, and it should, fingers crossed, if I do this right, it should all bolt up, and I should be able to put the poly mounts in that I want to run on this in place of the steel mounts I'm using for the fab purpose. So let me show you what the slotting looks like up close. So here's what we got. The back side is cut, and the top is cut. But the front, like I said, is not cut, and it's cut on both sides now. I kept, as you can see, the bolt is still in there, pinned in the front, and then the plan will be, which I won't be able to do very well with one hand, but to basically use a lever to close that gap. And I'll have to do both sides, kind of work them together, but close that gap by just brute force. And you can see it's pretty close to where it needs to be. Granted, like I said, I got to look at where it's at on the other side because it is rocking the motor a little bit. So I'll have to make sure that both sides go where they need to be. Once that's in, then we just got to throw some welds on there, and we should be home free. And that wacky, that's that vent up there, which gets super annoying when there's a breeze. But that fan that's right up there, that's golden in the summer when that thing kicks on. It helps suck the heat off the top of the building. Anyway, I'm going to do this, and we'll see. I'll show you. Oh, the camera's probably pointing the wrong way, but I'll show you if I make it. I might have to grind a little more material out of one side or the other to get that to bend down far enough, but I think this is going to work. That is a refreshing drink of victory. Both motor mount bolts are in, and the slotting efforts paid dividends, and it actually it took all of like 3 seconds actually. As soon as I had my second hand available to push the bolt in, a little eek on the motor mount, it shifted a little bit, whoop, bolt right on in. Golden. Now we just got to weld them up. But I know you want to see the evidence, so let me show you. See, there's the evidence. All right, I know that doesn't look any different. Here we go, up close. Bolt is through the hole. It's where it needs to be. It's happy. Now, granted, right now there is a little bit of tension on it. So when I throw the tack welds, I'm actually going to put the lever on there and press on it just a little bit to relieve the tension. But that bolt's in. Oh, let's grab the light. Come around to the other side. Throw the light up. Stick. There we go. And there you go. That bolt's in. And you can see this one doesn't even have any tension on it. All we did was cut a slot in there, lever against the motor mount plate just a little bit, and compress that slot. Now, it doesn't look like it closed much, but it did. It got about half the size that it was before. So now we just got to clean that up just a little bit so that we can put a weld on there and make that stick. Do the same thing over there on that side, and then we can get the drivetrain out of the way and get those welded up good. And by all means, we will have the motor mounted. All right, motor and transmission are out. The bolts were easy to remove after I got it tacked up, and the transmission cross members only a couple of bolts, which all came out just fine. No binding on anything. This is out of the way, which that's always a hassle, but with nothing on the front end, much easier than if you had a full front end put together. Let me show you what I'm looking at for, well, I'll give you a better look at these motor mounts, how the cuts worked out. Okay, now that the motor is out of the way, this is much easier to see. So here's the passenger side. Where's my light? There it is. Put some light down here. And you can see I cut with the grinder all the way down through the bottom, across, over the top, to the front side, but I didn't cut the front side at all. And if you look at the gap on the top, don't mind the welds, the spot welds, but you can see the gap is the width of a grinder blade there. But if you come around over to here, there's almost no gap. It's pinched up completely right there. Let me move the light since I'm blocking it with my head. There we go. So you can see it's pinched up almost completely at the bottom. So I took this, come around this way, I took the alignment of this motor mount and just tweaked it, which took it kind of out and down at an angle, which is exactly where it needed to go. And I did the exact same thing on that side, which fixed that problem. You can see my cutting job wasn't as clean on this side because it was harder to get in there. But you can see the width, make sure, move the light. There we go. So you can see the width of the cut at this end. And then if I come around on this side, move the light, there we go. You can see that it's tightened up a lot, almost no gap. And that's because I did the same thing, basically just tweaked that motor mount to where it needed to be to line up. The part that I don't understand, which is confusing to me with this front end and why I don't understand it, is this came off of a car that was a complete car with a drivetrain in it and was a running driving car. Granted, it was a 66 Chevy II, if I recall correctly, 66 or 67. But the front clip, aside from sheet metal, is the same. The pans are the same, transmission mounts are all the same, yet somehow this was in a running driving car. I don't know, I never saw it in the car. I saw complete photos of the car and video of the car running. You know how a lot of people are with selling stuff. If they actually want to do a good job at selling something, they have a bunch of information, kind of, especially used parts, showing, hey, look, it works, it's all there, it's complete, yada, yada, yada. Anyway, it was on a complete car that was a running driving car with a small block in it. And I don't know how they got it all to line up, because my trans cross member is the correct cross member for 700 R4. It's an aftermarket cross member. I checked it, it's good, there's nothing there, transmission fit. This car had a small block Chevy in it with the stock front clip, everything lined out and fit good. But for whatever reason, put this front end on here, and that came from another car that had a small block in it that was essentially from the firewall down and underneath exactly the same. The motor mounts don't line up. I don't know. It's confusing. Anyway, I'm gonna get these cleaned up, burned in, and then we'll be able to stuff that guy back in here and get it bolted up. And finally, I'll have a video where I feel like I actually made real progress and had some success, because the last couple have been a little rough. Welded up, at least almost. We're not quite, oh, my hat's on goofy. Anyway, we're not quite done with the welding, but I am done with welding up the grooves that I cut in there. Don't be too critical of my welding skills. They're not primo, but they get the job done, okay? I'll get better in time, I promise. Anyway, let me show you what I'm got going on. There is one more piece I'm gonna weld in that wasn't there to begin with. And part of this is to reinforce the fact that I cut the motor mount, and it'll also make the motor mount stronger in general. So let me show you what's going on with that. All right, like I said, don't be too judgmental. I know my welds are not primo. I'm not an expert, but it'll get the job done. The grooves welded all the way around, and I did some welding on the underside because, like I said, the bottom side of these is open, so I made sure that I got it welded top and bottom, which, by the way, welding this bottom side in here was kind of a pain in the neck. I kind of had to lay down in this area and work from in there so that I could get an angle where I could see what I was doing and get the whip in there. but that's okay. If we look at the driver's side, you can see I've got a clamp on there, and what I'm planning to do, like I said, the bottom is open, is I've got a piece of plate that I'm going to take and cap the bottom of these. So I'm going to box the motor mount in on the bottom like such and weld that in. What this is going to do is it's going to overlap that seam on this side where it's welded and help it to resist stress fractures in where the weld's at through that joint. So I'm going to add this on both sides. That's why this one's already clamped up and ready to go. I'm going to go through and I'm going to weld basically along this edge and along the other side, which will give me basically box this whole motor mount in, which essentially should be stronger than it was originally, given that I have a decent penetration on the weld, just because boxing it's going to make that whole thing more rigid and stronger. So that's the plan. I'm going to get this welded up. Once these plates are welded in, then we should be able to slam the drivetrain back in and find out if the motor mount bolt up situation is resolved. Hopefully it is. Otherwise, this is a whole lot of work that'll have to be redone. So yeah, I don't want to have to redo any of it. I'm pretty sure we're going to be spot on and be able to make use of the motor mounts now with just bolting them up onto the block. They'll use a standard shim plate. They'll have the right depth, the right alignment, and just bolt up. Yeah, granted, I did find one other issue with the poly mount specifically. I'm going to be putting those on. I am going to use them, but I think I have a fix for it. So let me get this welded up and I will show you what's wrong with the poly mounts that I got and give you a heads up, because I think I remember where I got them. Well, I don't think it'll really surprise anybody when you find out what that is. Anyway, let me get this welded up so we can move on to that step. Don't mind the rattle noise. I'm shaking up a little bit of paint here, but I'll stop for a second. As you can see, we're welded up. The box plate is welded in on the bottom. Same on that side. Like I said, welds aren't the prettiest. I'm not a master welder, but I'm not ashamed to bust out the grinder and clean them up a little bit. So structurally, they're there. They'll work. They'll get the job done. Now I'm just gonna, as you can see, I cleaned these up a little bit with a little bit of Scotch-Brite, and we're just gonna, son of a bitch, that's white paint, not black. Oh, I should have read the can. Yeah, I'll be back in a minute. I gotta wipe that off there. So I'm an idiot. Wasn't paying attention, and I grabbed a can that said Rust-Oleum because I forgot or wasn't paying attention that I have multiple colors of Rust-Oleum now and not just the Rust Reformer Black, which prior to a couple weekends ago, I only had Rust Reformer Black rattle cans. That's all I had. But we had gotten some other colors to do some work on wagons. Not this wagon, actual wagons for swap meet stuff. Anyway, we got some other colors and I wasn't paying any attention at all. I just grabbed the can that said Rust-Oleum. It was white. It had a white cap on it too. It's plain and simple. I'm an idiot. Anyway, this one I did make sure this is the right stuff. It's just black Rust Reformer base coat paint. All we're going to do is cover up the bare metal and the ever so slightly tinted white metal right there. We're going to make that black now. Anyway, let me flip the camera around and we'll get this done. All right, take two. As you can see, dipped me, sprayed it with white. That's super annoying, but you know what? Whatever. The whole front clip's not anything pretty. We'd have to take it off and break it all down and repaint it. And it is powder coat that's on here right now, so it's kind of a pain in the neck. So we're just gonna, center it. We're gonna fix it. All we're really trying to do is cover up the bare metal, which there's something on there, so it's not even sticking right. Oh, it's probably that white crap that I just sprayed on there. I think what I was saying though was, seeing as I'm not, the greatest at welding, I don't mind breaking out the grinder and the die grinder and the flat disc and all that to do a little bit of cleanup. Oh, I got to switch hands. Hold on. Bear with me. Oh, crap. Left-handed spray painting. This is going to be pretty. Oh, yep. Oh, man. Left-hand stupid. I am definitely left-hand stupid. I can't even talk while I'm doing it. It takes too much focus. Come on, left hand. This is probably terrible footage right now. If I didn't cut that out, well, I probably won't. Anyway, back to the right hand that knows how to use a spray can. But yeah, I don't mind cleaning up my welds a little bit with appropriate tools so that they don't look like total garbage. And now that that's done, that paint will cure up. It'll take a few minutes, and then we will send that on home. And by all means, I didn't do a test fit after I welded that all up in there. Or even, it basically what you saw when it was tack welded, it came out, it hasn't been back in, and it's all finish welded. So we're gonna hope that nothing moved and everything's still happy. Okay, those are about ready, and that paint's flashed off enough. I'm probably gonna scratch it all up, putting the motor in. But before we move to that, there was one other thing. Remember I told you I had found an issue with the poly mounts that I had. Well, to no one's surprise, I'm fairly certain that these came from Amazon. Years ago, I don't remember when I ordered them, but I was trying to remember, and I think they came from Amazon. And the mount's not right. So I don't know if you haven't seen one of the previous videos where I had them installed in the motor and I was trying to put it in the car, and the poly mount just would not line up. They didn't reach. It was like the mount was too short. And well, sure enough, I went to my steel mount right there, to this steel mount. I switched after the video ended. I was extremely frustrated, and I was like, well, you know what? Let me try different motor mounts and see if that solves the problem. This was before I found out that the alignment was no good, but sure enough, if I measure to the center of that hole, let's switch this around to where it's got 16ths on it. To the center of the hole on the steel mount, oh, you probably can't even freaking see it. Hold on, let me adjust where I'm measuring at. Man, hold on, I gotta get a table out so I can show this to you, because it makes a difference. All right, this should work a little bit better. I got, a flat surface table, and I added some light, so hopefully we can see what's going on here. Grab the ruler, try and get a good angle. All right, so like I was saying, the poly mount I found was too short. So if I put the ruler right here next to the hole, from the top of the table to the center of the hole, we're right about, what is that, 1 7/8? Pretty sure that says 1 7/8. If I come over here to the poly mount, we are at 1 3/4. So we're about an 1/8 inch low, meaning that no matter what I do, these both have the same thickness backer plate behind them. No matter what I do, if these bolt up proper, these won't bolt up proper if they only use one shim, because they're not made right. So I went out and I got a shim kit, which shouldn't have to even exist, but it does. And now you can see that I've got a 1 7/8 to the center hole there, which matches the 1 7/8 that I have on the steel mounts. With that shim added, these should be in line, center line of the hole should be in line, and these are slotted, which are probably going to help with a little bit of variation in the chassis mounts. But with the addition of that shim, now those poly mounts should work. So what that means is, watch out what you get from Amazon, because if these are probably China specials, I wouldn't put it past me to have done that. I think I bought them for another project years ago, to be honest. But they don't fit, all right? Shimming them to the right height should fix that problem. We should be able to use those. So I'm gonna get them bolted up to the motor with the shims added. The center line of the holes are in the right spot with the shim added. So by all means, here shortly, we'll be able to stuff that in there and bolt it up on the poly mounts and to the trans cross member all at the same time, and the motor will be in its home, and we'll finally be able to start moving towards the next step, which is getting the headers and the steering figured out. Not going to happen today because, like I said at the beginning of the video, I still don't have the headers that I'm hoping are going to solve the header steering issue. Anyway, yeah, let me get these bolted up. We'll get that stuffed and find out where we're at. All right, it's time for a moment of truth. Motor's right back where we started. Transmission's already bolted to the cross member's bolted to the car. All we got to do is find out if little motor mount bolts right down there are going to make it. So let's let me set this down about right about there. Yeah? No? Oh, you can't see it from there. Hold on. There we go. All right. Now, I'm not going to put nuts on these because I plan on replacing them with nicer bolts. And I might have to adjust the engine hoist a little bit, but let's yeah, I gotta tweak it a little bit. Almost there. We're starting. Got to go up a little bit. Hopefully this goes, and all day wasn't for nothing. There we go. There's one. There's one side. Let's go to the other side. Hang on, I'm going for a ride. All right, now we're on the other side. Can you see it? Yeah, oh yeah, you can see it. It's right down there. Right down there. Where's the bolt? Where's the bolt? There it is. Oh, no tweaking at all. Motor mount bolts are in. We can come off the picker. Hold on, coming down. That's loose. Oh man, just like that, we were able to fix the motor mounts. Pull the picker out. Oh goodness, watch out. Getting a little dizzy there, are you? Getting there, getting there, come on. And there we go. Motor mount bolts are fixed, the motor mounts are lined up. They're in, they're boxed, they're plated. They're, in theory, as long as my welding is decent, questionable. We won't get into that. But as long as the welding's decent, because I boxed them, they should actually be stronger than they were before. And we can finally make forward progress and move on to the next step with the front end, which is going to be, I need the headers so I can do the header install and the steering and make sure that works. Again, as I said before, I don't have the headers yet, so this is where we're going to stop for today. Thanks for hanging out, and hopefully, you know, some of you were hanging out waiting to find out how I was going to fix it. Now you know it's fixed, and we're ready to move on. We will see you guys on the next one.